So, Eric, how did all this get started exactly?
Well, it's all Robert Heinlein's fault, really.
Huh. Heinlein. This is Eric Raymond, the wandering anthropologist and troublemaking philosopher who took open source to the mainstream 30 years ago with his now famous essay, The Cathedral and the Bazaar. But the story goes back farther than that, at least as far back as the New Hacker's Dictionary, which was published in 1990. Technologically, we live in a world that open source made and that Eric's writings shaped. So what did you see that motivated you then? Why and how? Walk me through it.
Well, it's all Robert Heinlein's fault, really. He's a science fiction writer I was influenced by. He taught me to defend liberty and revere competence, and most of all, he taught me not to over-specialize.
Specialization is for insects.
That's right. Heinlein emphasized that when a competent man sees a problem, he doesn't wait for permission. He steps in and solves it. I learned that around 11 or 12, and it prepared me for the hacker culture later on.
Well, from what I've read, a lot of what you were worried about then rhymes with a lot of the things that are giving me heartburn today.
That's right. I edited and shipped the New Hacker's Dictionary in 1990 as part of an attempt to build a coalition against internet censorship. It was working the same problem that John Gilmore was from a different angle by founding the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Oh yeah, the EFF today. I mean, the threat, I think, now is back with a vengeance. Mandatory device controls for both content and user, increasingly draconian forced identity verification, starting with protect the children.
Well, we won the first round of that fight. The CDA was defeated. And publishing the New Hacker's Dictionary also had two effects that I had not anticipated. One was it made me famous, which I had very mixed feelings about. The other was a lot of people read it and decided that they wanted to be part of the hacker subculture that it described. And this turned out to be really important because that set the stage for the open source explosion a few years later.
Well, that explains a lot of the why, but how do you go from there to open source?
That happened because in 1993, Yggdrasil sent me a CD-ROM. I had to buy a CD-ROM drive in order to bring it up. That's how early it was. And I ran it, and my mind was boggled because it was clearly a better operating system than the System 5 that I was using at the time. I felt a burning need to understand why this was, and I studied the problem for years afterwards. And this is where what Heinlein taught me about over-specializing became really important, because the theory I came up with to explain this wasn't primarily built on software engineering. It was built on anthropology, evolutionary biology, and economics. If I had allowed myself to over-specialize in being a software engineer, it would never have happened.
So you saw something special in early Linux, the cohesion, the community, and anticipated that it could be forged into something Promethean, maybe as a clue to a larger insight.
Right. I didn't understand what the early Linux developers were doing, and they didn't either. They were using a kind of unconscious folk method, and I began to view it as my job to wake them up and make them aware of what they were doing.
And remember, this is 30 years ago.
Everybody who thought about software engineering at the time, everybody's thoughts were dominated by Brooks's law, which predicted that the larger your pool of developers gets, the more communications problems you have. You wander into a swamp of bugs. The whole process is inefficient and doomed to crash.
But see, that's why we're here. I think we need another round of that today. I see disturbing parallels that connect right to repair, forced ID to get online, and controls on 3D printers, but I've really struggled to find the framework to make plain how corrosive these measures really are. I mean, how do we wake more people up?
One of the best ways to wake people up is to make them aware of a desire that they have and haven't fully articulated. So, for example, name an issue that's top of mind for you.
Well, right to repair.
I think the unconscious desire here is people want to control the things they own. They don't want to be slaves to their tools. I think people can resonate with that.
You think of right to repair as a right that can be granted, I think you're already on the back foot. That's waging a war on the other guy's terms. I mean, that's not good enough for me that it's like, oh, we need right to repair. Why didn't we have it the whole time?
Yeah, don't be afraid to make the big moral case rather than the little contingent one. And now I sound like Richard Stallman.
Pull on that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I used to criticize him a lot for making a moral case rather than a pragmatic one, because I thought the moral case scared the people that we wanted to adopt open source away. I mean, what does J. Random businessman care about somebody's moral crusade? But when you're pitching to people who aren't primarily profit maximizers, the ordinary person in the street, maybe the moral crusade is more effective.
Well, and now, 30 years later, the cohort of people that realize the importance of right to repair, I think, is much larger than it was in your day. And maybe that makes it both easier and more difficult to mobilize.
Here's the moral case. I refuse to be controlled and limited by things that I bought to serve me.
That makes sense. I think people instinctively feel that. And I think we've got a lot of work to do, though, because IP law is making it difficult. There's so many things that vendors want to turn into felony contempt of business model. I mean, repairing your own device, sure, but even format shifting movies, music, things like video game preservation, many aspects of our digital culture have technical controls implemented by parasites that are really designed to obstruct us.
People are angry about this, and they should be angry. To wake people up, you need to turn these emotions into a story, a narrative about why the world should be different than it is now. That's what I did twice, once for the hacker culture and once for open source.
So we're already on a back foot legally. How did you defeat the Communications Decency Act?
Part of it involved being an individual amicus in the Supreme Court case challenging the CDA.
Oh, well, we'll just argue before the Supreme Court. And yet, maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of happening with some of the right to repair, but, I mean, it seems almost insurmountable.
Another effect that it has was pulling the hacker culture into a more cohesive group that was more willing to speak up for its common interests. That helped create the political background against which the CDA was defeated.
How do you think we can apply that today with what we're facing?
Enlisting journalists and word people is a tactic we can certainly use again today. We need to persuade them that these control freak moves aren't weird, arcane technical details, but can actually hurt them where they live.
What other tactics were effective to promote open source that could also apply today?
Well, at the time, I was doing propaganda in two directions. Internally, I was working to inspire the hackers that they could be part of a larger game, and also that they didn't have to distrust free markets. Free markets could be their friends.
They really can make the world a better place.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
I've definitely been accused of being cripplingly optimistic.
Externally, I used the propagandist's three best friends: fear, greed, and desire for status. The fear I worked on in business people was that they were on the wrong end of a predatory relationship whenever they accepted a dependency on closed source. Changes happen on the vendor's schedule, not theirs, and the relationship with the vendor always tends towards more control of the user.
That sounds like subscription lock-in, maybe even the AI provider wars. I'm worried about when they're going to try to outlaw open models, because think of the children.
Oh, don't say that. Don't give them ideas. The greed I worked on was, well, every business person wants more profits. And even though that isn't a zero-sum game, they tend to think as though it is. So my pitch was, you want to get to the benefits of open source before the other guy does.
Well, okay, what about social status? How do you attack that?
Oh, well, yeah, you can be the cool people. You can advance the social good by contributing to open source.
We need to build on your success to fight today's power grabs. The government is saying age verification is a social good, but most people are unaware that Meta and companies like Meta are funding age verification campaigns as a way to escape legal liability for what kids do on their platform. How can they be liable if there's age verification and kids aren't even supposed to be there in the first place? How do we renew the movement and build on your success in the face of threats like that?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that one. This may not be by fight to fight anymore. I never really wanted to be Mr. Famous Guy. I wanted to get the mission done and go home.
Well, I can certainly get on board with that, but the jailers and thieves have been working round the clock this whole time. No reasonable person thinks farmers should be locked out of fixing their tractors, and yet here we are. So what would your advice be for those of us that recognize these issues to help spread awareness?
Well, it's like I said in the other video. You can just do things. Really, you can just do things. Be high agency. You're starting from a much better position than I did. We got 30 years of open source success to give us leverage. I guess...
You hear that, audience? Get it done.
Maybe the most important thing I can remind you all of is that I succeeded at my fight. Open source is pervasive. It's all around you. So you can succeed too. Show the people around you there is a higher level game to play, and the world is a better place without the corporate and government lockdowns.
It really is spooky to me how similar your fights are to what we face today.
That's because it's the same struggle against the same kind of people.
People who hate freedom.
And
it sounds cliche, but it's obviously true.
And exploiters. Yeah.
I mean, I think you've written a lot in the past that is as relevant today as it was then. So if you haven't read that, you should definitely check it out. And thanks for joining me. And also remember,
you can make a difference, and you can have fun doing it.